We're going to get right into it with Rabbi Dovid Heber. In addition to being the JM and the AM Calendaric consultant, he is the Kashrus administrator at the Star K. He's spiritual leader of Kal Avos Yisrael Tzemach Tzedek in Baltimore, Maryland. He's also author of the book, The Intriguing World of Jewish Time, which we always highly recommend. If you don't have it yet, make sure to search for it and get it. The Intriguing World of Jewish Time, Rabbi Dovid Heber. And Rabbi Heber, it's a pleasure to welcome. Oh, and let me mention that today, our segment on Calendaric Trivia is sponsored by our dear friends Carrie and Joshua Levine of West Hempstead, in honor of their daughter Shoshana's upcoming marriage on June 1st to Seth Schlank, son of Eileen and Michael of Plainview, New York, and also in honor of the Levine family's dear friend Chava Segal's recent marriage to Ellie Walkenstein. Mazal Tov, and I thank the Levine family. Rabbi Dovid Heber, a pleasure to welcome you back to JM and the AM.
Good morning, and good Chodesh coming up tonight, as you mentioned, and I hope your Yontif went well.
Yeah, I hope your Yontif was wonderful. Ours was great, thank God, and here we go. We're going to jump right into it because the moment, now you have to get into this, okay? You got to bring yourself back to this night that I'm going to describe, Rabbi Heber, because you're obviously going to be able to answer this question, but you have to get it. You have to be focused on the night that this happened. And I thought of you the moment it happened. I'm davening in a very interesting minyan, a Hasidic minyan, on Motzei Shabbos Chol HaMoed. Okay, so the 3-day Yontif has just ended. It's now Motzei Shabbos Chol HaMoed. You get it? Are you in that space, Rabbi?
Tricky night. Go ahead, what happened?
Very tricky night. A very tricky night. I am going to ask you to identify what each one of the Gabbai bangs was for. And the reason I thought of you is because the Gabbai, who's a real stickler, you'd appreciate this Gabbai, who's a real stickler in this congregation. The Kaddish ended. He banged purposely in rhythm. He banged on the table 4 times, and then everyone started the silent Shmona Esrei. Rabbi Heber, can you identify, and then we'll discuss why he did 4. I have a theory why he did 4 when he really didn't have to. Rabbi Heber, can you identify the 4 times on Motzei Shabbos Chol HaMoed?
Okay, so the main 2 that were necessary, and it's interesting because I had a discussion with my Gabbai right before Myra. We'll get to that in a minute. But the 2 main ones were, of course, the same bracha and Yal V'Yavai, which were new to the moment, so to speak, because same bracha was the first time. Yal V'Yavai, even though we had said it, but and Chol HaMoed, Shabbos Chol HaMoed, but it was part of the Shabbos davening, and even Chol HaMoed, Shabbos Chol HaMoed. And then, of course, you had either, it was a Chassidish Shtibel, they meant Merid Atol, and I would assume Atachan Antanu.
So first of all, of course, you get a grade of 100 on the quiz. Of course, you got it all right. But I was saying to myself that in theory, as you've just alluded to, he could have gotten away with 2 and or 3. But I think he was worried that someone might think that one of those 2 or 3 was for Atachan Antanu, and therefore not realize that there was something else that had to be added or changed. So therefore he said, you know what? I mean, I'm assuming this was going on in his head. He said, you know what? I'm just going to go for broke. We'll do every possible bang there is, and there'll be even less confusion. Do you agree with my theory, Rabbi Heber?
Absolutely. I agree so much with you that we think exactly alike.
Wow.
Because my Gabbai came over to me and said, so by Myra, we'll announce it.
Right.
Because you could be mafsik. You could quote unquote interrupt, so to speak. Right. In order that people know what to do. Right. So he said, my Gabbai said to me, should I announce Atachan Antanu, Yal V'Yavai, and the same bracha and Yal V'Yavai? And I said, just do the same bracha and Yal V'Yavai. Because Atachan Antanu, it's a regular Motzei Shabbos. You don't need any special. And then, of course, now our shul is L'Sachashkana, so we don't say Merid Atol. Right. The shul doesn't say Merid Atol, so there's nothing really to announce. You don't say, no Mashallah. And anyway, it was ready the 4th day. So to speak, We already started the first day, second day, Shabbos. So that even the Gabbai didn't ask to do. So he wanted 3. I said just do 2.
Right, and I would think that you could if you really wanted to stretch it and take to the extreme that I must remind the congregation. You could probably just announce Mechalkel Chaim or something like that, or Rav
Correct. There's nothing wrong with it.
Rav Lo Shia Mechalkel Chaim. Just to give a reminder. Exactly. But you're right that among the really necessary ones, it doesn't get to the top of that list. So I thought of you, Motzei Shabbos Chol Hamoed. What do you think of that, huh?
I'm honored. I thought of you, Shvi Shal Pesach, because you would ask me a question about being mitzaref, adding to a minyan. Can you add to a minyan people, Israelis,
right,
on Yom Tov Sheni,
right,
people with Bnei Eretz Yisrael who are no longer keeping. So I on Shvi Shal Pesach night, I always go through my favorite shilas in shul between Mincha and Ma'ariv, that came up on, for Pesach, and you were right up there in that list of that discussion. But I must tell you 2 other shilas that you'll really appreciate. One was someone found the 10 pieces of chametz, cholamayit, in their car. That's the chametz that they searched for,
right?
And they found it. They found the 10 pieces.
They forgot to burn it.
Yeah, so they burnt it when they threw it in a box of other chametz, and it somehow fell out.
Right.
So, of course, I told them to go burn it.
Right.
The other, you'll appreciate the story. This came from my daughter-in-law in Chicago about my granddaughter, my 5-year-old granddaughter. She's looking through all of her Seder belongings and what she'd prepared in Gan. And, she had, I guess, the Haggadah and the Afikoman bag. And then my daughter-in-law sees what looks like a cookie.
Oh, my God.
And this is Erev Pesach, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Erev Pesach. So my daughter-in-law says to my granddaughter, what's this? She says, we baked matzahs in class.
Oh, my God. So
I told my daughter-in-law, call the teacher. Maybe like it's a piece of matzah again. The teacher said that it was, we baked, quote-unquote matzahs in class. They were supposed to eat it for lunch. But as I said, my granddaughter wanted her matzah from her chabura.
She's not going to have it at the Seder.
She took it off. Anyway, they quickly got rid of it. I think my granddaughter was crying in the background. Anyway, that was my favorite child of the Yom Tov.
We once had a case when our kids were little where 9 pieces of bread were found, and the 10th wasn't.
Oh yes,
and that was created a panic in the house. The other thing I wanted to mention, you spoke about the and I'm glad you included it in your favorite shilas, being mitzaref, allowing those who don't have to daven a yontif Shemona Esrei, those who are from Israel who are davening Chol. On Friday, I have boys who put on tefillin on Friday. On Thursday on Acharon Shel Pesach, they were putting on. Obviously not in public, but they were putting on tefillin. And can those people be mitzaref if they're not saying the same Shemona Esrei? And it's a real shaila if you need them for these 6 mispalim, if you need them for the 6 people. Right. And it's very interesting, Rabbi Heber, and I'm not going to get into it now, but. And I may have mentioned this to you off the air, I spoke with 2 really, really big Torah giants, like real poskim, on this issue, and the 2 of them had completely opposite points of view on it. Isn't that interesting?
Really, very interesting. Yeah, no, because it's a very, again, to count to the 4, you'd have no problem. Right. Meaning if you had 6 Americans and you need someone to be mitzaref as your number 10 man, there's no question that would work.
Right. Just to explain to people, meaning if you literally have 6 who are davening and just 4 people hanging around to help you with the minyan, that's what we're talking about. So part of the 6 would be people that are not saying the same Shemona Esrei. So it was interesting. And thank goodness, in our case, it worked out anyway. We didn't have to, in retrospect, we didn't have to ask the Shaila because of the way our numbers worked out. But the going in, it was a very interesting thing to consider. Can I assume, I'm doing this quickly because I know you're really tight on time today, so I'm going through my questions a little bit quicker. Can I assume you did not, can I assume you did say Avarachamim this past Shabbos?
We did not say Avarachamim.
Interesting. Because
we did not say.
So I got to be careful. I got to be careful with my attitude because, we go, obviously, as many people do, we go by the Rav Henkin Luach. Rav Henkin says to say it last Shabbos, even though it's Nisan, to say it because it's Sfira, and it's Shabbos Mevorachim, nonetheless say it because it's Sfira. And someone said, someone yelled at Ashrei. I said, well, it's a machlokas between you and Rav Henkin, and I'm going with Rav Henkin. But I got to be careful here because you're telling me it's not across the board, that there are those like yourself who don't say it.
Right, a lot. So by Sivan we say it. In other words, Shabbos Baruch Sivan, which will be this year Heber Chodesh, a month from today actually, will be Shabbos Baruch Sivan.
Right.
Then we will say it, but only by Sivan. By Iyar and by Av, there are Chukah days. By Av, probably the prevalent minhag is not to say it. By Iyar, it's a split. And
is it? Do you really think it is 50-50?
I'm not sure. I'm only saying it because I learned that I was like to learn Chicago Tells, and my Rabbi, Reb Chaim Ben Keller, in first year Beis Medrash, we were learning Yavamas, and this goes back some 44 years ago, right? We're learning Yavamas. In Yavamas, there's a famous sugya of Leish Kodedu, which is the topic of different people doing different things,
right?
As a tefillah, non-tefillah, and all that. And in there, he told the following story, which I'll say was more of a joke. And not often you get a joke in the middle of shir, but he said it was Shabbos Varchim Ear, this exact case,
right?
And they started getting into a big argument. You say, you don't say. So there was a guest there, and he asked the Rav, "What's the minhag?" And the Rav points to a couple of people fighting. He says, "That's the minhag."
That's fight about it.
Arguing.
But I always,
of course, in halacha to argue in halacha, of course, is the minhag here.
Because I always thought that Rav Henkin's luach is so dominant in the American Ashkenazi community that it would make it like 90-10 and not 50-50. Am I wrong about that?
Maybe. Like, no, you're right. It is very, very dominant. On this one, I think this prat is like so well known. Like, if you want to know, do you say Vinayam or this kind of thing? Then yes, people go to that.
Right.
This of a rachamim is more of a. I'll use the word cultural in the sense that people have it in their siddur. It's
very interesting. Rabbi Heber's with us, trying to review some of the stuff from this past holiday season. We always make a big deal that we rarely say the Haftorah of Miketz, right? Isn't it like once in a 19 or 14-year cycle that we actually say the real Haftorah of Miketz? Am I right about that?
Very rare. I think it's about one. It's about one, and it's rare.
So someone said to me, wait a second, how often do we say the real Haftorah of Shmini, which we did this past Shabbos?
Okay, so Shmini is like this. Shmini in a leap year, you're not going to say it,
right?
Because it's going to be Para or Dal Parshas, and in a regular year, it's going to be so you always do it unless it's Erev Chodesh,
right?
Which means if Rosh Chodesh is going to be on
Shabbos
Sunday, Monday, right? Rosh Chodesh Sunday, Monday, then. And Machar Chodesh, but all the other times, Shmini is never Shabbos Rosh Chodesh,
right? Right.
It's always the Shabbos in a regular year. It's the Shabbos after Pesach,
right?
In Eretz Yisrael, actually, you're always going to say it because when we have Erev Rosh Chodesh Shmini in Eretz Yisrael, they have they relate Shmini, of course, when we have the 8th day of Pesach.
Right. So
they'll have it, and we won't. So in Eretz Yisrael, it's going to be 12 out of 19 years. You say it, and in Chutz La'aretz, it's going to be less frequent. So, for example, I know in 13 years, someone had a baby this week. Their son lives in Eretz Yisrael.
Right.
Someone in my shul, and I called them up and I said, okay, the bar mitzvah is going to be. It depends if they live in if they're going to stay in Eretz Yisrael or not.
Right.
It's going to be Shmini Tazria Mitzvah because if they in Chutz La'aretz, it'll be Shmini. But if they stay in Eretz Yisrael where they are now, the baby was born there, then it's going to be Tazria Mitzvah.
Interesting.
Because it's that type of year that. The 8th day of Pesach is Shabbos, and
so Miketz is a 90% thing. Shmini in Chutz La'aretz, it's like a 50% thing.
More, actually. Yeah, about 50. I put about 50%. When you add it all up, something like that.
We were in a Hasidic minyan Shabbos Chol HaMoed, as I just told you. Shabbos Chol HaMoed. Okay, not the first 2 days Yontif. We're talking about Shabbos Chol HaMoed, and they duchened. And I said, whoa,
Really?
who duchen Shabbos Chol Hamoed? And they said that the Satmar Rebbe in the late 1960s made a declaration that Shabbos Chol Hamoed Pesach and Shabbos Chol Hamoed Sukkos, they should duchen. And that's been and it's funny, anybody I've mentioned this to knew that it was a Satmar thing, that if you're in a shul affiliated with Satmar, you're going to be duchening Shabbos Chol Hamoed. I'd never seen that before. And no singing, of course, no Yiratzon, no singing. But I thought you'd find that interesting, right? I didn't hear about until this.
I've heard of such a minhag. I wasn't exactly familiar who does it. I've never seen it, but I've heard it's done.
What about yelling out Kohanim if there's only one Kohen? Across the board, nobody does it, or you'd say it's a machlokas?
Right. I think it's not done.
At all.
It's not done.
And if they do it, it could be wrong. Or not wrong, but it could be ill-advised if one would do it, right?
I think so. I would say so, yeah.
By the way, another very interesting thing I found out, and this had nothing to do with being in a Hasidic minyan. This happens to be because I was speaking to my nephew, who's very familiar with a lot of different minhagim. Apparently, and this is only in Chutz La'aretz, because in Israel, they count Sfira when it's not Yontif anymore. They start Sfira. But apparently in Chutz La'aretz, there are people in yeshivish and Hasidic communities who want to count Sfira the first night after the Seder and with a minyan. There was a minyan at 2:45 Friday morning, 2:45 a.m. Friday morning in at least two places that I know of to say Sfira with a minyan. You ever hear of this before?
No, fascinating.
Isn't that unbelievable?
To say at the end of the unbelievable. To say at the end of the Seder is a beferish Maxwell House Haggadah.
Right.
It was in there before Achami Adaya and other Haggadahs. Right, I always thought it's of course it's a Chutz La'aretz thing, because some think if some view it as stira, for me to it's a contradiction for me to count stira and shul and then go home and have the Seder. By definition, Seder Sa'imer is the beginning of Chol Hamoed,
right?
Which is of course the case in Eretz Yisrael,
right?
But that's really why it's the custom for some to really wait till the end of the Seder, but to have a minyan for that's fascinating.
And it's interesting, and I assume, I assume it works out, because for the other 48 nights, many people, I'm sure you and many others, will only say Sfira with a minyan. So I guess it works out that they feel they want to do all 49 with a minyan.
Right. Of course, if you daven Marav, any Marav minyan that's man, that's going to be
all right.
You'll be counted with a minyan. But Friday night you don't get it. The early Friday nights you don't get it.
I know you officially only have 3 minutes left, so you have to tell me when you really have to go.
Go ahead. I can chat a little bit. I teach in seminary and with seminary, but a few minutes late it'll be fine.
How many people have asked you this week if they could take a haircut tomorrow?
Oh, so I've been speaking about it a lot. I spoke about it Shabbos. I actually mentioned it again this morning in shul. And even if you hold the first Sfira, the Mishabura brings it, and Simon Taf Tzadi Gimel Sivkat and Hay. He quotes actually. It's I saw in the Pirush. It's from the Rav Shulchan Aruch, which I actually looked up this morning. And basically, the Rav Shulchan Aruch makes two statements, which the Mishabura quotes pretty much verbatim. And that is, even if you keep what we call the first Sfira, which means you started already, and you go to Lag BaOmer, since this Shabbos is Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh, we'll call it like a yontif, so to speak.
Right.
And in preparation for that very, very special day, you could get a haircut and shave tomorrow with this Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, very special occasion.
And I was told it's only in the Ashkenazi community. The Sephardic community would not allow it.
Right. That's correct. And you never have it Sivan. In the Oiz V'Hadar, it actually points this out, and I appreciated the statement that for people who keep the second Sfira, you don't get the same benefit by Rosh Chodesh Sivan, because Rosh Chodesh Sivan never falls out on a Shabbos.
Right.
So therefore you don't get it. Now, the Mishabura said something else, which I just finally understood this morning, thanks to the Pirush of the Oiz V'Hadar. The Mishabura says you could also get married tomorrow.
Meaning Friday.
That's the
Friday Rosh Chodesh.
Friday, even if you keep the first Sfira,
right? You
could get married tomorrow, which I always wondered. The Shabbat said something. The Snicker Suda, it's Shabbos. It's explained. Why can I get married tomorrow? Why can someone get married tomorrow? Because it's Shabbos Rosh Chodesh. What is tomorrow? You get a haircut tomorrow because it's a preparation for Shabbos Rosh Chodesh.
Right.
But what does getting married tomorrow have to do with Shabbos Rosh Chodesh? So the explanation is as follows. And again, this is, of course, I was at a wedding last night. but that was the family, kept the second sefira.
Right.
So for them, it wasn't sefira. And by the way, even if I get the shiloh all the time, and your listenership should know, even if you keep the first sefira, you could attend the wedding.
Right.
It's going to be sameach, the chas v'kala of a family that keeps the second sefira, which means if you're invited to a wedding tonight,
right.
which I'll be at a wedding tonight, you could go because even though I'm in the middle of sefira already, but you could go because it's not sefira for them, and you're there to, for their simcha. But so back to getting married tomorrow, even if you keep the first sefira, you can get married tomorrow. But there's a big catch. There's a big asterisk. It's because the Suda is going to be on Shabbos.
Right.
So since the Suda is Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, like they used to in the olden days, people got married Friday, and they had their Suda on Shabbos. So since the Suda is going to be Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, so we kind of put aside Sfira and say that it's Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, and that's it. So to make a wedding tomorrow and have the intro by Nachum Segal when the band comes out and the Chas and Kala come out to your introduction, you can't do that, right? If you keep the first two. However, if you're getting married, someone's getting married tomorrow and has the student Friday night, like the old meeting, then they can get married tomorrow.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. By the way, when you were growing up and I was growing up, am I right? There were never weddings this week? There were never weddings between Pesach and Rosh Chodesh? Or am I misremembering?
I don't remember. Yes, I wasn't, when I was a kid, I grew up in St. Louis, there weren't a whole lot of weddings in the first place.
Right.
But however, I think the German customs in communities that were more German start this period. So the more Yekish Kehilas, I think they did it, but the Hamanam of your regular neighborhoods, I think, was much less.
Do you want me to,
as were weddings? You
want me to check in with Stanley Raskus and find out about weddings in St. Louis, Rabbi? Should I do that? Should I give him a call?
Sure. Absolutely.
I spoke to Erev Yontif, by the way. Okay. And then Yoni Pala came out. This will be the last major Shiloh, I know you got to go. Yoni Pala came up with this one. I thought it was brilliant, this question. And any real gabbai, and you know what I mean by a real gabbai, Rabbi Heber, would go to town with this one. Yoni asks, for the gabbai responsible for preparing the Torah, is the longest Torah roll from B'Shalach to Re'eh when you have to prepare the seventh day of Pesach Torah for Achrod Shal Pesach? Is that the longest Torah roll that a gabbai has? He thought that there are times that he also put in that one of the big jumps, if you will, is when you have to go from Shabbos to Shavuos. Like this year we're going to go from Shabbos to Yisro. We're going to go from Yisro to Shabbos, right? This year Friday Shabbos is Shavuos, right? So are we going to? Well, you Yisro the first day. Oh, what do we read the second day Shavuos? What do we read the second?
Ray.
So Shavuos to Ray. So that's also a pretty big jump. But B'Shalach to Ray, right? 7th and 8th day Pesach might be the longest. What do you think?
I would say, if you take Simchas Torah out of the equation, going from the Beis HaBracha back, I think it's Rosh Hashanah going into Shabbos. Meaning the 2 days Rosh Hashanah, right?
Because that's Bracious.
Right. Now, of course, the last laning on Rosh Hashanah morning, you went to Pinchas. So technically, it depends how many Sefer Torah you have.
No, but if you have a number of Torahs and you're reading just from Bracious in the first one, then that Torah,
correct. And you want to roll that,
right? And you want to prepare
but
that.
If you roll the Maftir one, if you roll the Maftir one, Rosh Hashanah, then you'll get to roll Pinchas till. It's going to be Hazinu then.
Right.
So it really depends on what the roll. If you go Bereshis, you got a long one.
But I'm saying that you've basically answered the question. If you're going to go with the standard practice of, the first Torah, second Torah, etc., and you leave the second Torah in the Maftir, which people do year round, then Rosh Hashanah to Shabbos, Rosh Hashanah to Shabbos is going to be the longest one. It'll be Bereshis till the end of Dvarim.
Right. Vayer all the way to Hazinu. Yeah, it's a long roll. That's a long roll.
Who thought it could be longer than B'Shalach to Re'eh? Wow, that's great. Yeah. Unbelievable. So we're going to be a parsha off. Israel's going to read Naso, I'm assuming, and we're going to be reading Naso the following week, right?
By the way, right. We're gonna read. Israel's gonna be reading us. So right,
Yeah.
that's right. We're gonna correct. Yeah, exactly. Right, like you said, correct.
So how many weeks will that last? That's going to go until Dvarim? Is that going to go until Erev?
So Chukas Polak. The 12th day of Tammuz. So it goes about a month. It goes about 5 weeks.
And I assume that's the shortest time that we could be off with Israel, right? That's the shortest period of time we could be off.
In a regular year, when you have Achar Shel Pesach, then I think the distance to Shmini and Bahar B'Chukaisa is identical. It might be off by one, but I think it's the same 5 weeks.
Interesting.
And I'll leave you with a very quick story. This topic of Chukas Polak is very dear to me. I think I mentioned this on the show a few years ago. My father used to get a magazine from Eretz Yisrael called Punim El Punim, or my father used to call it Punim El Punim. It used to come in those onion skins. It was, it was air-shipped.
Yep.
And I could read. I could just read the Luach, which of course I had a fascination with. And I come running over to my father. I said, Daddy, there's a mistake in here. It's got the wrong parsha. Right, it had Kairach instead of he said, no, let me explain to you. They're a week ahead. That's where I learned about this.
That's where they broke your little boy's heart, and they'd let you know that we're off 1 week with Eretz Yisrael.
That's where I started learning all this from my father. All the time, he taught me all the basics.
Unbelievable.
All the basics.
Rabbi Heber, can't thank you enough. From the quiz on, you did brilliantly today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Rabbi,
to you and your listeners.
Thank you so much. Guten Chodesh. Rabbi Heber, of course, Kashrus administrator at the Star K, spiritual leader of Kal Avos Yisrael Tzemach Tzedek in Baltimore, author of the book, The Intriguing World of Jewish Time, which we always highly recommend. Rabbi Heber and his segment today is sponsored by our dear friends, the Levine family, Carrie and Joshua Levine of West Hempstead, New York, in honor of their daughter Shoshana's upcoming marriage, June 1st, to Seth Schlank, son of Eileen and Michael of Plainview, and also in honor of the Levine family's dear friend, Chava Segal's recent marriage to Ellie Walkenstein. And I thank the Levines, and of course, a big thank you to Rabbi Heber. More coming up. You're listening to a Sphera format edition of JM in the AM.